Hello, KIDO. Once again this weekend, the Great Idaho Show. This is Dylan Stalker, your multi-generational Idahoan. I have been many places. I have been and done many things, most of which Idaho associated, and I'm in love with Idaho. I am in love with radio. This is KIDO Radio. And, Idaho is great, and I'm terrible at radio, but we often, every weekend, bring in a great person of Idaho. And this week, we're going to be talking to Kenny Calkins of Cloverdale Plumbing, something that all of you in radio have heard. You're hearing it this week on KIDO, or last week or the week before on many other radio stations. Before we talk to Kenny, don't forget, Old Arms of Idaho, they are your collectible firearms, Western, and military specialists. Think of them like the Antique Roadshow for all that wonderful stuff. We are a firearms state. There is lots of that stuff going on. Give Old Arms of Idaho a call, oldarmsofidaho.com. They are your ambassadors to America's heritage. I'm really excited today. I feel like I know this person, Kenny, sitting next to me, who... Kenny, just to clarify for me, what you were the owner of Cloverdale Plumbing. You were not the creator, but what's a bit of the history that got in there?
Oh, I can go way back to 1953, the beginning of Cloverdale Plumbing. It didn't start out with the name Cloverdale Plumbing. It started out with the name Union Plumbing and Heating.
Sure.
And their first office was not too far from this radio station, right there on Broadway, just to the north of Boise Avenue.
Well, so we're talking about a lot of history. We are talking to somebody that's been a part of Idaho, I believe, for your entire life.
Well, I was born and raised in Boise, born right there at the St. Luke's Hospital back in 1954, as a matter of fact. So, and I've been here my whole life. Never really moved anywhere else outside the Treasure Valley.
Well, I mean, you found a good one just right out of the old stork carriage there, and you've been a part of it for so many years. I'm so excited because in this conversation, I believe what we'll get to know about Kenny is this is about the trades, the wonderful opportunity in the trades. I was a plumber for a good little bit. I love plumbing. This is about an Idaho business. There's lots of businesses in every town, but in every town, I guarantee you, if it's a town, there's a plumber in there somewhere, and there's good ones or bad ones. And I love radio. When you need a plumber bad and you need them good, called Cloverdale Plumbing. How do I know this? Because I hear it on the radio all the time from Kenny. But Kenny, a question.
Well, and that is a great saying. Everybody loves that. I hear that all over town. If you need a plumber bad, you need them good. Once they know who they're talking to.
Call Cloverdale Plumbing.
We'll be there.
Yes, thank you. I love it. I love the power of radio, and it's had an effect on me when I was trying to think about, whom I could talk to. And the Great Idaho Show is about businesses and artists and people doing things or things happening. It's not like this is paid for content in any way. And so all of y'all know, Cloverdale Plumbing really has nothing to do with this. I was interested in Kenny and how his association, but now when you realize it has everything to do with what's great about Idaho and this wonderful place we live, because we can be engaged in a business no matter what it is and go right to the full life success story.
Well, that's great, and I spent my whole life in the plumbing industry. My father was a plumber. I loved going out and helping him on things, and as a matter of fact, two of our friends when I was a kid didn't have indoor plumbing, and my father helped put a bathroom in for them and got rid of their outhouse. That was their two very memorable things for me when I was a little tiny kid, and I liked being around my dad and watched him do plumbing, and I always liked to be I decided to be a plumber when I was a freshman in high school. We were talking one day, and he said, "Well, why don't you be a plumber?" And I said, "Well, sounds good to me." So ever since I was a freshman, I decided to be a plumber, and I've kept at it my whole life.
It's to me, it's like plumbing is like those toys that we had a long time ago. They don't have toys like this anymore, but like connects and erector sets, right? New construction plumbing and the concepts of how to map this water system out is, I mean, it's like a giant puzzle.
Well, we don't have toys like we used to, 50 years ago, but you know what? We don't have plumbing tools and materials like we used to 50 years ago. Everything has changed and evolved, and any kind of a successful plumbing company will stay up with those changes. We've got a tool crib full of antique tools that'll never be used again, but, what are you going to do with them other than hang them on a wall?
Oh, so that's funny that you say that. I have... we'll say some old cabiny type property up in Lowman, and in the dump before they got where you couldn't grab stuff out of it, there was an old iron pipe threading, a manual iron pipe threading wrench, right? And we were going to make some curtains, and I was going to use some old iron pipe, and I was like, well, I'll just use this. I'll thread it down. I've threaded pipe before. And without the power of that machine to get it done, I'll tell you what, turning that tap on that pipe took every ounce of strength that I possibly had to get it threaded down enough. It was like, wow, you had to be pretty tough back in the day.
I'm telling you what, some of them old plumbers were some of the toughest people I ever met.
I have this memory. We were putting in 3-inch gas. I think I told you about that. We were threading 3-inch iron gas pipe with pipe machines and doing all that stuff. And I thought that the old pictures of the pipe wrench, or something like Chicago Industrial being 6 feet long was kind of a joke, like it was a logo joke. No, we had to get 6-foot long aluminum pipe wrenches, high strength aluminum pipe wrenches, trying to thread those things together. I was a very strong individual at that time, man.
Let me tell you what, you were lucky if you have the aluminum pipe wrenches, because even at Cloverdale, we have a 60-inch steel pipe wrench, and it really takes a real strong person to pick it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a 50-pound tool or more.
More. Or
more just to get, and if you're working overhead, man, things get pretty wild in there.
Yeah, it really can.
That's neat. It's interesting. You talk about the concepts of a changing business, plumbing going from it's like galvanized into copper and sweating copper, and then into the PEX revolution. And there was a time in somewhere about the 90s, there was some polyurethane pipe that they thought was the greatest thing that ever was known to man. And then come to find out 20 years later, all this underground stuff is bupkis, no good anymore.
Well, they found that out about the polybutylene, and that's the gray pipe that a lot of people would have in their house. And at one time, after all the failures, they did have a class action lawsuit, and it's gone away now, and thousands or probably millions of homes got replumbed with those funds from that suit. But it has gone away, and we're still to this day replumbing houses that are plumbed with polybutylene.
It's like, it's an industry that connects to every single human on this planet. Hopefully, there's a lot of people out there there's a lot of people in this country that are kind of complaining, and it's like, do you have hot water coming out?
Well, trust me, certainly not everybody in this world has modern day plumbing.
For
and
sure.
I'm sure there's a lot of people, just like the two people that my parents knew back in the day that had an outhouse, that they don't have modern plumbing. There's a lot of places in this country that the modern plumbing just doesn't exist.
And it's something that we should be so thankful for, and something that I hope to talk about on this show ultimately, which is my relationship to plumbing is that it saved my life financially. I worked in professional business, and then that whole 2008 thing happened and pretty much wiped us out. And I was driving from Boise to Ketchum-Haley, Sun Valley, thankful to my best friend's dad who put me to work. And I had no idea, but he was one of those leaders where he's like, well, here, I'll be back in 2 hours and figure it out. And it's like, are you sure? Because plumbing's got some real rules to it,
Well, trust me, there's a lot that can go wrong in 2 hours, for sure. But I'm sure that he knew better than to leave you for too long to keep you from getting into too much trouble.
That's a great assumption. You don't know me very well when it comes to getting a tape measure. Measure twice, cut 3 times. I can't figure it out. It's pretty fun, though.
Well, you just got to go slow and steady.
Slow and steady wins the race. What is that? It's just basic patience and consistency. I mean, it's like a reflection of Cloverdale Plumbing. I mean, it's been at it so very long. What do you think in all of that, of all of those transitions, what's one that stands out to you the most?
You know, it's just hard to say. I think the technology and computers and, you know, today every one of our trucks, you know, we have a camera on it where we can send a camera down a sewer line to see what kind of problems down there and stuff like that. Years ago, all of the plumbing was pretty much done with galvanized for probably the first 3/4 part of the century, and then copper came around, and then certainly the plastics has made a huge inroads to the plumbing here in this valley or in the world too, and so it's really changed a lot. It's changed our service trucks a lot because we have to carry so many more products to match up what we may find in houses built today. And even today with the plastics, there's 4 or 5 different systems that you can pipe a domestic water system in, and so you have to have all the different particular tools and parts to be able to match up those systems.
Yeah,
not like the old galvanized where you just, you know, you had a threaded fitting, and you know, and it was pretty easy. So
yeah, I can imagine, you know, you'll have a Wurzbow expansion tool and a PEX crimper and all the different types of plastic pieces out there.
Sounds to me like you know more about plumbing than I would imagine.
I mean, you know, plumbing is a wonderful thing. We're a lot about the new construction, but when it comes about the service side of plumbing, it's one of those things that you wished you never knew it, but you're sure glad that you did because of what those results are. And we'll talk about some of those fun stories that happen here in this next segment. Ladies and gentlemen, KIDO Radio, this is the Great Idaho Show. We're talking to a great man of Idaho, Kenny Calkins of Cloverdale Plumbing. You've heard him on the radio. You recognize the voice. And don't forget, Old Arms of Idaho, your ambassadors to America's heritage, the collectible firearms Western and military specialist. We will be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear me say those words a lot because, my goodness gracious, can we please get back to a world where there are ladies and gentlemen? I have a great gentleman here of Idaho, Kenny Calkins of Cloverdale Plumbing. You've heard the voice. You know the words. When you need a plumber bad, you need them good, call Cloverdale Plumbing. That's the voice of Kenny that you hear on the radio all over the place. I love radio. We're coming back in this next segment. Kenny, I mean, I guess I can't give myself any kind of a plumber title, but plumber to plumber, there's got to be a story in there that's one of your top favorites.
I don't know if maybe I could tell the story about the time I thought we burned the Capitol building down. That might have been a good one.
I mean, yeah, let's hear that one. That sounds fantastic.
Okay. Everybody remembers when the Capitol building caught on fire on New Year's night. I was sitting there watching the Orange Bowl, 1991, I think. And all of a sudden it came over the TV, you know, that the Capitol building was on fire. Well, we had just finished about a 3 or 4 month job replacing all of the old galvanized, speaking of old galvanized, in that building and replacing it all with copper. Well, back then the only way you could put copper together was with a torch and soldering it. And so that happened. That went on was on the bottom of the game, and I mean, I jumped up immediately, and before I could get out of my sweats and get my pants on, I had 2 or 3 phone calls. One of them was my dad wanting to know what was going on, and I started down Fairview, looking. I was thinking I was going to crest the hill there at Fairview, and all I could see was the flames of the Capitol building. And
you saw the flames?
No, it wasn't. That was my imagination.
Seriously?
No, it was my imagination. Yeah. And so we got on down there, and I went around to the east side, and I talked to a guy that worked for, at that time, I think it was United Water, and we were talking about it, and I could see where we were working. The very last deal. And we were working there New Year's Eve in this one restroom up on the second floor, the men's restroom, and I could see a light on there, so I knew the fire wasn't anywhere near there. And it was over on that north wing, and there's no plumbing out on that north wing. And as it turned out, ended up being a cigarette in a Tupperware can. But
oh, really?
But there for a while, I thought, that's the end of it right there. I burned the Capitol building down.
Life's about the headlines, right? I mean, there's so much underneath it, but I can imagine your heart just pumping a little bit.
Oh, boy, it was.
That is tremendous. So again, ladies and gentlemen, talking to Kenny, you're seeing the people who have experience work on buildings like the Capitol building. When you've been at it for as many years as you have, and you provide a good professional service and you deliver that, you get to have those calls where you get the opportunity to remodel the Capitol building. Any other significant buildings in Idaho you messed around with?
Well, I'll tell you what, and I always remember this one. One of the last jobs that I had when I was working as a foreman, it was the Morrison Center. We worked on the Morrison Center, and I worked on that job for over 2 years, and just steady every day. It was a great, that was really just a great job to work on, and seeing how that thing was all put together,
sure,
and all, and it was pretty amazing.
That's a big deal.
I look at that today, and I think, that was cool. I was the foreman on the plumbing on that thing, and it was great getting that thing done.
That'll be a landmark that'll be there beyond my kids and their grandkids, very likely. Now, hopefully they don't get 20, 30 years down the road and have to go replace what pipe you put in there just because of technology. What were you guys putting in there?
Well, you know what, as a matter of fact, that job, because they were so concerned about sound, that was specified galvanized pipe.
Really?
On the domestic water, because they didn't want any sound from the water running through the pipes. And copper, you can hear water running through it. Galvanized, you really can't hear it. So they would spec that job galvanized. And that was actually the last job we ever did with galvanized domestic water.
That is like the biggest galvanized project in Idaho, or the last biggest galvanized project in Idaho. I mean, even getting the material might have been tough.
Oh, no. Back then, you could get the material pretty easy. It was a 5-inch system.
Yeah.
It started out with 5-inch, and as it went out to the different parts of the building, kept getting smaller and smaller.
I love the image of, I'm assuming you still had to cut threads on all that pipe, or you just ordered a bunch of different threaded lengths.
All of that pipe came in plain end, because at that time, threading was pretty much gone away, and the system that we used, you would put a groove on each end of the pipe and connect it with a mechanical coupling.
Oh, really?
Everybody knows the term Victaulic, but that's really a brand name.
Yeah.
But that's a grooved piping system.
So it's almost like a PEX crimpy type scenario for a steel pipe. You're crimping a coupler on there.
Well, you had a mechanical collar that held the two ends of the pipe together, and inside of it was a hollowed out rubber gasket that, as the pressure hit it, it sealed it tighter onto the pipe.
Like a union kind of. Okay, we're in the weeds, folks. We're talking to the professionals here.
One of the reasons that that they touted that kind of a system is that they said every joint was a union.
Oh, okay. Because I'm familiar with your typical,
Yeah, if you thread, or some way or another, you've got to have an ending or a stop, or an ending to it, and so you would have to have what they call a mechanical union, and in that system, every joint was a union.
That is an amazing project, I believe. So did you work with Vern Gossi? Does that name sound familiar to you?
I've recognized that name, but I can't tell you how.
Because I think Mr. Gossi was the foreman or the man in charge of design of stacking every one of those dang bricks. That is just
might have been, but one thing I remember about the brick on that building, if my memory serves me correctly, there was more brick on that building than any other building at that time in the state of Idaho.
Yeah, I mean that is a reflection of projects of two old world technologies, not too very long ago in reality, used in their greatest application. I mean, that is just to be that big of a brick building is tremendous.
And they laid every brick by hand.
You sat there. So you were. I try to picture the concept of laying the pipe inside a brick on the other side of a brick wall, and then they just put fascia over it or something.
Well, all of those walls on the outside of that building were either concrete or block. They would and they would put the brick on the outside of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And whenever you're building a building, everything has to kind of be done in stages. So like if it's a block building, masonry, and as they come up with a building, if we need to put a pipe in, we would work directly with those craftsmen, the block layers,
sure.
and we would lay that pipe in as they're putting the block up, so that it's inside the wall.
Like standard construction, general management, coordination amongst the contractors.
There is so much coordination out there, it's just hard to imagine.
And the personalities, what I love about the trades is the character of the trades. I mean, some of those characters are really easy to work with, some of them not so much. It's just got to be, how do we make it smooth,
Well, isn't that the same in about everything?
Isn't it, though, actually, I guess now that you point that out? I mean, it's every kind of business, except you've got the soft hands in there trying to make relationships, walking around in, their fancy shoes and shirts, while you're trying to coordinate carrying a pipe that might weigh 150 pounds while you're trying to put it in. It's the tactile use of the material and coordinating all of that. There's just a little added pressure, I think.
Well, there really is, especially when you're working on something. A bad move can cause the death of a person if you went the wrong way off of a scaffolding or something fell on top of a person. So yeah, it is a different there, but it's still a lot of coordination.
It's a lot of coordination. Ladies and gentlemen, KIDO, this is the Great Idaho Show. I'm so excited to be here in this home of KIDO with Kevin Miller and all the producers and everything. Very thankful. We're going to come back to this next segment talking to Kenny Calkins of Cloverdale Plumbing. But before we get there, once again, folks, Old Arms of Idaho, they are your firearms, Western, and military specialists. They are into the collectibles. They help you identify the good stuff, They are your ambassadors to America's heritage. If you've got something like that, or even more importantly, an entire collection, they are there to counsel you. We will be right back, folks. And as the great Kevin Miller here on KIDO would say, welcome back, everybody. I'm learning from him. I'm so lucky to be a part of the radio community. We have another gentleman here that we've been talking to, a part of the radio community, a very well-recognized voice. We're talking to Kenny Calkins of Cloverdale Plumbing, because I've got to say, Kenny, one of the most impactful ads I've heard. I'm addicted to radio, and from really starting to get involved in radio somewhere about 15 years ago and turning on the local stations here and getting in love with it. Your voice has been on there the whole time. How did that all come about?
Well, I started advertising on the radio one day. Actually, a competitor of mine advertised on the radio, and I'd listen to his ads, and I enjoyed them, and very good competitor. And so I thought, well, maybe I need to be on the radio. And I ran into somebody that sold some radio advertisement one day, and I decided to buy some. And this building here housed the first radio station that I ever advertised on. Very special station, and so I like talk radio because I listen to talk radio because
sure.
I think it's very informative, and there's different ways you can hear music, but there's really the best way to hear good talk is on radio.
Sure, absolutely. You think of the jingle, the slogan. There's a little bit of story about that if you listen to the ads, but how did that come about? If you need a plumber bad, you need them good. Call Cloverdale, we'll be there. That's good stuff.
Here's where I think it came about. when Union Plumbing and Heating started in 1953 and was located on Boise Avenue, there was a neighbor of his that sold novelty items like pencils and stuff. And so the owner, Wally Varner, long since passed, but he evidently had these pencils. And years later, after we changed the name from Union Plumbing and Heating to Cloverdale Plumbing, we were moving my mother into a care center, and we were cleaning out her office room in her house, and there was a box of sharpened pencils, and I looked at there was a couple of orange ones, and that was the main color for Union Plumbing and Heating back then. We like green and white now, but and there was an orange pencil, and on it it said, if you need a plumber bad, you need him good. And I looked at that and said, you know what? I've got to go over to Cloverdale's office, and we got to now start putting that on our pencils. That's a great saying. That's where that saying came from. Who invented it first? I don't know, but I sure am glad they did.
But me too, and I tell you, it works because, plumbing is one of those things that it never really matters until the hot water isn't coming out, the leaks underneath the seat, or Lord forbid that you have one of those cast iron waste delivery systems that crumbles underneath the tree roots. That I'm telling you out there, folks, if you're living in Boise and you've got trees and things like that, and you've got a home built in probably the 50s up into the, what do you think, Kenny, up into the 70s?
Well, they've used cast iron cleanup into the 70s, really. But any of those old ones, there's always going to be problems with them. But let me tell you what I think about when I think about that saying: if you need a plumber bad, you need him good.
Yeah, I love it.
A lot of people might have, a housewife, and she needs a little something done, and her husband, is handy, and he might try to get this little project done, or somebody has a relative and they've got a little problem or a little situation, they want to have it done, and this person may not have all that much experience, but they'll get it done eventually, and hopefully it's right. But let me tell you what, when everything goes bad, what you really want is a good plumber, and good plumber to show up now and get it done fast.
And get it done, folks. That's the key. I have this one story that I was doing service in Haley, and in Haley there is a tennis club called Ironwood, and it's one of the only tennis clubs in the valley. So for a long time, a lot of, we'll say, affluent folks were there, and the ladies' shower had clogged up, and I got to go and grab me a 250-foot long cable snake and run the machine and go fish out what was ever coming in these pipes. And meanwhile, I'm this 20-something kid swashbuckling this thing that's trying to clean out this very old building that's got a lot of issues. And right as I'm pulling out this 6-foot long thing that you can imagine if you've been involved with it, these group of beautiful ladies comes walking by, and they're looking at me like I couldn't tell if I was embarrassed, they were amazed, or just, man, the things that come out of a lady's bathroom in the tennis clubs or whatever it looked something monstrous. It was you got to be fairly tough and open-minded in the plumbing world.
Well, you got to remember what caused that in the first place. It's all the beautiful hair that ladies around wear.
That's a fact. It was, we love to see everybody taking pride in their body, man or woman. It's quite all right. So,
and one thing that we know from the Egyptian mummies is hair doesn't deteriorate.
No, it doesn't. It does live in those pipes, and it seems to be a catch for just about everything. But It is such an amazing opportunity. I think what I also appreciate about what I believe I understand from your experience, you've witnessed the workforce transition. Was there a time where it was just like, hey, it was easy to keep the jobs filled, and then I'm assuming it's a little tougher now? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to tell you how different it is. When I first started and went to work for another company, it was called Vandergrift, and was started by a guy named Howard Vandergrift. He's since gone, great man. But but I was a part of the union, and it took me a year and a half before I could finally. I put my name into the union. It took me a year and a half before I could finally was allowed to work with the tools.
Sure.
And it just took a long time. It was 1973. I'm right in the middle of the baby boomers, so there was a bunch of us, and there were more young men getting out of high school than there were jobs to have. So it was easy to fill a job as a plumber. And today, with all the new types of jobs out there that are not less, you talk about that drain snake and being in that situation. There's a lot of jobs out there that you don't have to get yourself into those situations. So it is hard to fill some of these jobs. Electricians, plumbers, HVAC techs. There's hundreds of thousands of those openings around the U.S., but still pretty hard. And we're very thankful. Cloverdale's worked real hard. We've got a nice young man. There's a nice young man that bought it and is running it, and we've got a lot of young people working there and learning the trade. And I'm pretty proud of all of those that are working there, because you know what, we're all going to need those people that'll kind of do those jobs here forever, as long as I always make the thing I said on one of my commercials a while back, we're going to need plumbing until everybody stops eating.
Yeah, so I love where that leads to, where in this next segment, I think what a lot of people are starting to hear is just the real opportunity that there is for a young individual to have some extremely basic character traits. Be on time, do the best that you can with what you're told or what you're learning, and just don't lie, don't steal, and live with a little bit of honor. And you, like this young individual that's purchasing or had purchased Cloverdale Plumbing, there's a wonderful path and opportunity with security and knowledge and the ability to work in an industry that when the job's done, there's some heart-swelling pride in there, like the Morrison Center.
Well, there really is, and Justin is his name that bought the company. He's got a great future for him, and the nice thing about it is he's providing a great future for all of the employees of Cloverdale Plumbing. There's a lot of young people there that are serving apprenticeship and working to get their plumbing license, and some that are already licensed, and it's a great thing. And I wrote a commercial a few years ago where they were talking about where you couldn't afford to buy a house in Boise, but yet our apprentices were buying houses.
And that's a fact, right? And now, even more than ever, even getting started, it's a pretty dang good wage.
Well, it's a really good wage, and it's all about supply and demand, and there's a lot of demand out there for those kind of jobs, and the supply isn't like what it used to be, and so the bigger the demand, the higher the wages. It's always been that way.
Okay, folks, we've got one more segment coming up here. I would, Kenny, love to talk to you a little bit about those trade opportunities, if we have listeners, and the listeners that'll be listening for years to come, because this is all posted now in a world where people can listen 24 hours a day at thegreatidahoshow.com. Don't forget it. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about those opportunities and what that looks like, because there might be some kids and parents listening and might be able to inspire some folks that way. This is Dylan Stalker, The Great Idaho Show. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The Great Idaho Show. Once again, this is Dylan Stalker of The Great Idaho Show. You can go to The Great Idaho Show 24 hours a day and listen to episode after episode of Great Idaho, great people, great things happening. Artists, I mean, there's so much to talk about in Idaho. I'm the lucky one. I love radio and I love Idaho. I'm just terrible at radio, but I do get the chance to speak to some wonderful people. Today we have Kenny Calkins here of Cloverdale Plumbing. You've heard the voice. You'll hear the voice and know it, recognize it in moments. These past few segments, we've talked about some great projects that Kenny's worked on. We've talked about just the experience of it all. But, Kenny, in this one, we were just reviewing what a great opportunity it is to be a young individual today in the trades, like Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs is promoting. What kind of work, what type of opportunities do you see out there for them now? Like maybe something that a parent that might be listening can say, hey, go to this place and start here. What does that look like?
I don't think there's a plumbing, electrical, or HVAC company in this town that really couldn't use more help right now. There's a lot of work out there that needs to be done. All you have to do is decide, maybe maybe there's a reason you want to be a plumber. My dad was a plumber. Maybe there's a reason you want to be an electrician, or maybe you want to be an HVAC guy, or maybe you don't know. Just go to work for one for a while and see if you like it. There's really a lot of opportunity out there. Now, I'm going to give you an example for Cloverdale Plumbing. If you was to come to work at Cloverdale Plumbing, we provide your education for you. We pay for it up front. We don't ever expect anything back. I know there's companies out there that say, well, you have to stay for X amount of time and then we'll reimburse you, or you pay for it up front and we'll reimburse you later. No, we just pay for it up front. We've had apprentices leave after 4 years, and really I'm okay with that. I say I would rather have I'd rather pay somebody's education than have them not be educated. That's the most important thing. But really, and the thing about the trades is you don't end up with a lot of college debt. And you don't end up with a lot of taking a lot of time, taking classes that maybe doesn't really have anything to do with what you may want to do in your life.
Well, I can tell you from my experience, if you're going to be a plumber working on the job, when I was doing it too, you better be in a class and you better be, it's one thing to be job site cleanup, but if you're going to be carrying the wrenches out there and you're going to be using the tools, the job site coordinators and all those people want to know that we have people at least in training. And that, what you just said, to have a company like Cloverdale, and I'm sure there's others, that just pay for that education as a cost of doing business. And all you have to do is those things, those character traits: be on time, be positive, hustle, and focus. And what I love about it is there's plumbing needs all over this world.
You can go all over the world and work as a plumber.
It doesn't matter if you go work in a town that was 500 people. If there's plumbing, there's a need for that opportunity. I just think that's such a fantastic chance for people.
Yeah, it really is. And you can go all over the U.S. or you can go all over the world being a plumber or an HVAC technician or an electrician.
I love that you cover the trades as a whole. I'm always, the people that I talk to, they're my super fan, so I'm a super fan of plumbing. I also was a plumber, and I've got to say, electricity scares the death out of me. It's like magic, and you won't get me within 100 miles of that stuff, man.
Well, I knew I didn't want to be an electrician because I knew I couldn't outrun it.
I'll tell you what, it is something that that's what we have trades folks for. We've got to put together a professional product when we're building these homes.
Well, and no matter what we're building, we need to put them together the right way so that they last forever, really.
Yeah, and that they deliver that water safely. I listen to your commercials when we're talking about the backflow device. When you're integrating your ground irrigation or yard plumbing and having it associate to your drinkable stuff. I mean, there's even little risks in that too, I guess.
Well, there certainly is risk, and before they've mandated backflow devices, there was a lot of people that not only got really sick, but there's a lot of people that lost their life because they drank water that was contaminated. And so I'm very glad that they started using backflow devices to make sure that the water that you're drinking is good for you.
So if I'm a young individual and I'm like, I want to do plumbing, start to finish, just took the job tomorrow with Cloverdale Plumbing or an HVAC company or any other type of trade, what does that time and outlook look like before, I guess, you become a journeyman?
All three of those trades in Idaho are a 4-year apprenticeship program, considered about 8,000 hours. That's figured if you work steady, you work 2,000 hours a year. So it's a 4-year program. No matter what you in plumbing, I know for sure, you get so many hours credited, then you have to sit down and take a test, and then you can get your license. And the same thing really with electrical and HVAC.
And a journeyman, generally across the trades, what is a journeyman making these days, do you think?
North of $30 an hour.
Okay. So, and that's just getting right at it. And of course, I love any and all businesses where people take that wonderful experience and may go start their own, and that's independence. You can keep your overhead life down and get out of the loans and stop debting out your life, and maybe you can be a traveling plumber and be like, well, I'd like to go and live in McCall for the summer, and go and do it out of the back of something. You can be very creative with your experience.
Over the years, there's been several people that has worked at Cloverdale that left and started their own business, and I can say one thing that I'm happy to say about it is that I'm friends with pretty much every one of them still to this day.
Because right now, there's more work than people.
There's more work than people.
There is a competition out there, but there's almost no competition when there's just so much stuff to do out there.
There really is, yeah.
And there's different types of work, too. It's not all just in-home plumbing. I was lucky enough to work in the boiler room scenario and all the hydronic systems of the, we'll say the wealthy Sun Valley type folks that don't like to shovel snow and plumb and pipe under paving stone and things like that. It's just, there's more than one way to get at it.
Well, there really is, with radiant floor heating and a lot of those big places up there in the Sun Valley or even McCall area. There's a lot of radiant floor that's being done up there, and some snow melt systems, to keep you from having to shovel off your sidewalk or your driveway. Yeah, there's a lot to do in a newer house that is being built today.
Well, Kenny, it's been a pleasure speaking to you today, good sir. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for letting me come in. I appreciate that.
Yeah, 100%. I've always loved hearing you on the radio, and I know that it comes from a great basis. It's great Idaho, and it's easy to get a great opportunity in Idaho. It just takes patience, consistency, professionalism, and I think Kenny Calkins is all about that. This is the Great Idaho Show, thegreatidahoshow.com, where you can hear it 24 hours a day. And don't forget, Old Arms of Idaho, your ambassadors to America's heritage.